I was always in survival mode.
Mhm.
And even when I started to practice as a dentist, also in survival mode. Unfortunately, you turn it on, but then it's really difficult to find that switch again and to turn it off.
This episode of the Tooth or Dare podcast is brought to you by our friends at Philips Sonicare. Thank you for helping dental professionals elevate oral care with your partnership and dedication. Philips Sonicare offers comprehensive oral care solutions catering to the entirety of our patients' needs. To achieve a healthier oral environment for your patients and provide them with a more radiant smile, Philips Sonicare provides an array of products designed to optimize their oral hygiene regimen. These offerings are meticulously crafted to ensure optimum efficiency, allowing clinicians to tailor their brushing experiences accordingly to their specific patient needs and requirements, whether it be teeth whitening, enhanced plaque removal, or overall gum health. Sonicare electric toothbrushes harness an impressive technology boasting 62,000 brush head movements per minute. This innovative approach gently pulses water between the teeth, effectively dislodging plaque and facilitating its removal. Backed by over a century of healthcare expertise, Philips Sonicare instills confidence in users, and it's consistently helping us clinicians get the results we desire. For more information about Philips Sonicare products, please visit the link in the caption below. Welcome back to another episode of the Tooth or Dare podcast, peeps, with your peep Irene. Welcome back to an amazing episode that I'm getting to meet an Instagram friend in real life, Dr. Charlie Cage. How are you? Hello. I'm like a
I'm
little
well.
starstruck.
Really?
I do, because honestly, I respect people that have high quality content. And
Oh,
not that people don't have high quality content, but I know how difficult it is to have really good setups and really good lighting and
yes.
intentional equipment. So I love your page. Like, I really love your content, and I love
Oh, thank
how
you.
thoughtful it is and honest it is. And it mixes a little bit of dentistry with lifestyle, which is something that
Yes.
I aspire to do. So it's nice to meet someone who also does that. We could talk a little bit
Yeah.
about that afterwards. But you have a really interesting story. You've been practicing dentistry for 12 years, restorative dentistry, and I want to know about how you are emerging in survival mode now after being a naval officer. And I think you talk about that on your page quite a bit. So hi, how are
Yeah.
you? Your day
Thank you.
today?
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Pleasure.
Um, so I guess I'll get things started with dental school.
Go
Um
before that. Where are you from
Before that,
originally? Like,
okay,
yeah, like start from birth. Like, how
from
far
birth.
back can we
Okay.
go? Yeah. Take me back to the womb.
All right, let's do it. Well, I was born in St. Thomas, so that's the US Virgin Islands. And when I was 3, we moved to Dominica, which is closer to South America than North America, but it's in the Caribbean. And I lived there until I was 14. And when I was 14, I moved to Nebraska.
Okay.
And that's where I finished up high school, went to undergrad and dental school.
What brought you
Um,
to Nebraska from the islands? And what was
my
that transition like?
sister, yeah, my sister actually received a full ride scholarship to go to one of their universities.
Mm,
So that was my connection to be able to say, okay, I have some type of family that I can um, rely on. So that was my sister, moved to Nebraska and spent about 10 years there.
oh wow.
Mhm.
How
It
did
was
how
cold when
what's
they said it was
Nebraska like?
warm.
I've never been to Nebraska.
It's a quiet town, but uh, you know, I would say it's a good place for school. I think I had a lot of learning opportunities there, and it's a good mixture, not too big, not too small, to make
Mm,
me feel like an island girl, not completely foreign. I thought
yeah.
that was a good, even though it was really cold, it was a good introduction to a big state.
And so did you always know you wanted to be a dentist, or how did that happen?
For quite some time, I knew I wanted to be a dentist, which is why I ended up moving to the States because there wasn't a dental school in the Caribbean. And
Really?
so, yeah, so my mom made the
Still?
tough decision. Still, still. think there's one medical school. There was
Wow.
two. I think there's only one now. But no dental school. And I had my plan. And, my parents thought it was better if I moved up to the States, got used to the culture and everything in high school before I went to college and so on. But um, I knew I wanted to be a dentist. I think I got distracted a little bit when I was in high school.
Mm.
I did the Air Force Junior ROTC there, and
Okay,
I
what is
would have
that?
joined.
I'm in Canada, so anytime that anyone it comes on here and they talk about like the military or anything, to me, it's like over my head. So
Yeah.
what does that mean?
It's like a high school version of the Air Force.
That exists?
It does. And so it's
What's that like?
like extra credit courses,
Do you
extracurricular
wear
courses.
uniforms like all day?
Do
Like you're like in like military, what's the camo or like
not all day, not all day, but during class we would.
really? So you
Yeah.
go to school wearing jeans or whatever, and then you
Mhm.
change
Yeah.
into like your
For that
uniform.
for that particular class. Yeah. It was really good. I felt like it introduced me to I feel like something I've never been exposed to. So it was nice. And I was a senior in high school at that time, but I was only 16. So I could not join the military without my parents' permission. Um,
Oh,
yep.
yeah.
So I had to go to college.
And your parents wouldn't let you like go
No,
join the military that
no.
young.
Yeah. Because their concept of the military was that I would go off and be killed.
You're like an active duty and
Right. So they were
yeah.
terrified.
Well, yeah,
But yeah,
rightfully
so they
so.
said
But I
no.
guess they just didn't know that that wasn't actually like what percentage of people actually get deployed versus that are in the active military but local.
Yeah, it really depends on the year, and what's kind of going on right now. Right now, it's not a lot of deployments. But yeah, I think it just depends on the type of year. It's hard to say though,
And what
and where exactly the
where you
deployment
are.
is. Mhm.
Got it. Huh.
But for my deployment, it was more of a humanitarian mission. And we went down to a couple of countries in South and Central America and provided healthcare. So
Hmm.
um,
So
the Navy have two main hospital ships, and so that's we took one of them and did one of a humanitarian mission there.
how long were you gone for?
About 4 months,
Oh wow.
which is
So
short.
what's that like though? What's it like? So you're like, how old were you at this point?
I was 26. I was
26.
26.
And you had just graduated dental school?
I graduated from dental school when I was 24.
Okay. So you
So,
had already gone through. And so when you went to dental school, did you go to dental school independently from the military or was it
yes,
connected to the military? Because
yes,
I've interviewed somebody else that went to dental school through the Navy and got their schooling paid for.
yes. So there are different scholarships that you can do, but it is up to the person to actually get accepted into dental school first.
Mm-hmm.
Once you have acceptance, then you can have your education funded by the Navy. So they'll pay for 4 years, and then in return, you'll practice for 4 years. And when I joined, it was after my first year. So I signed a contract for 3 years.
So did they pay for any of your school? Okay,
Oh,
that's good
yes.
because dental school is like ridiculously expensive. Like people are getting out
Ridiculously
of dental school
expensive.
with like almost $1 million in debt. I
Yes.
spoke to
Yeah.
someone recently who went to NYU and they have like $750,000 in debt
Oh,
with
yes.
no like no hopes of not like wealthy parents ready to cut you a check at the end of the day.
Yes.
So
I
that's a lot.
tell new applicants who are they're interested in dentistry, like you could be a master ceramist or something else where you can get your hands in dentistry,
Yeah.
but without that financial burden because it's kind of getting outrageous. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Mhm.
with all of these reimbursement rates just diminishing, I mean, I don't, it's really a struggle for
Yeah.
anyone
And
Hygienists as
it's
well.
not
Like dental
just the
hygiene
amount.
schools are expensive also.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's the interest rate on the student
Yeah.
loans. It's
Right.
really high. But yeah, so after my first year of dental school, I ended up joining the Navy and haven't looked back since. Yeah, it's been 12 years. Yeah, 12 years since I've been in the Navy. Got to travel a bit, learned a lot, did a residency program. Again, it was out service. So I was a civilian for 3 years, but completely paid by the military, which is nice.
That's great. Yeah.
Yeah. So now I'm back in officially. Um, but I think the struggle of um like my path of becoming a dentist was so burdensome because I didn't have, parents who could pay for undergrad or for dental school. I worked my way through college to fund that. And so I was always in survival mode.
Hmm.
And even when I started to practice as a dentist, also in survival mode. Unfortunately, you turn it on, but then it's really difficult to find that switch again and to turn it off.
Yeah.
Um, and then just noticing my patients because being in the military can be very high stress. I find that oftentimes in the operatory, I wasn't performing just as a dentist, but oftentimes as a therapist.
Yeah.
A lot of stress, right? And so then I started to realize that, those stressors are not just in my patients, but they're also in me as well. And in order for me to be a better provider, I needed to start working on myself. And then in
Mm.
order for me to be a better provider for my patients, I needed to treat them in a way that wasn't just, you need to brush and floss,
Yeah.
but to help them in a more holistic way and see what I can do to help them and navigate them in a way that self care wise, they could be better off.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And I want to backtrack to ask, what did it look like day to day when you were in dental school? So after your first year and also in the Navy, like what are your obligations to the Navy? How much extra time? Because dental school is busy.
Yes. It
So
was
how much of a
minimal.
commitment? Yeah.
Yeah, it was minimal because their goal is to have you be successful.
Mm.
Because if you were to not graduate, then it's not very helpful to them. So there are different programs you can do, but the program that I did, I had to do a physical test. So that took maybe a half hour, and that was twice a year.
Oh, that's like totally can schedule that in.
That was it.
I can
Mhm.
make that work for my tuition. Totally
Yes,
no
and they worked
problem.
around your schedule. It was
Sign
very
me up.
easy.
They'll
Mhm.
come to you. Great.
Yes,
Okay.
yes,
Yeah. No problem. On a
yeah,
Tuesday, I'll make it happen.
yeah.
Cool. Um, okay, so let's talk a little bit about that, leaving the stress mode and into out of survival mode and into, like, it's a weird question to ask, but I ask myself this all the time because I also feel like I go through waves of living in survival mode. Now is one of them.
Yeah.
But I feel like, do you even know who you are as a human anymore? Like, who am I? Who are you without, when you peel all of the layers of all of the
Yeah.
stressors?
Mhm.
School, work, family, friends, obligations, the person you think you should be.
Yeah.
Like, how did you discover who you were after everything is
I,
removed?
yeah, I think it's like you described, where you're starting to take all that stuff off. And I think when it really hit home was when I was deployed and there was no cell phone service. There was no Instagram or anything like that. All you had was peace and quiet and
Mm.
your thoughts, And so I did a lot of journaling and just trying to think of the things that I love to do, not the things that I thought I should be doing.
Mm.
So I think that moment of solitude was, the initiator to say, you need time with nature. You need to unplug and you need to reprioritize how and what you think about things. Because the way that things were, of me constantly stressing about, saving for retirement, or, my future and all this stuff, it all of a sudden started to become overwhelming. But being disconnected can help you realize, wait, I'm here today. I feel grounded, and the future is not promised, but I'm here right now. What is in my control? And then you go with that. And then everything else, you just let it go. And I would like to say that
Easier
I
said than
think
done.
that way all the time.
Yeah.
But I don't. And it's just life. You go through cycles. And so I always recommend that if you've identified that you have certain triggers, to talk to somebody, have a therapist on hand. I remember that when I had my second baby, that was right before COVID, and there was a lot of stress. I was also in residency, and luckily, I was in that point in my journey where I identified that as a potential for issues, and call up a therapist. Like, hey, I'm having some potential stressors. Please give me some coping mechanisms so that I can get through this. They always talk about, big T or little t. You want the trauma to be small. You don't want it to be so big that you feel overwhelmed and just buried. So you always try to tackle it when it's small. It's always easier. So I always say be proactive. Your best friend or your mom, no matter how good they might be at giving you advice, they're not professionals.
Right.
So I always, always advocate, hey, just talk to a professional and just share your thoughts, and then try to figure out different ways that you can, get your mind in the right place so that you feel happier.
What are some techniques that you've learned over the course of your journey? Like, what are some things that you go back to often?
Um, with my personality, and I think a lot of dentists are like that, where we're fixers. And if there's a problem, not only are we there to fix it, we want to fix it quickly.
Mm.
And we don't like asking for help. It's like, we got this, right?
Yeah.
Because we can do pretty much any and everything, right? So some things that I've learned is when a problem presents itself, to slow down and take a deep breath. And then ask yourself, is this actually a problem? If it is, then I ask myself, am I the only person who can fix it? Can I delegate it to someone else? Or can I even ask for help? Which was difficult at first for me to ask for help. And even if I didn't ask for help, if somebody asked me if I needed help, it was tough for me to accept it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those things that I thought was making me weak, I've learned they're actually my strength right now. So I slow down, I pause, I take a deep breath, and then I recruit help. Because I always say, like, it's, even out in the wild, if you have a pack, you're a lot stronger. You don't need to have a massive pack. It'll literally be 2 people, 3 people, but you can't do any and everything. But if you surround yourself with people who have a skill in a particular area to be able to take care of those things, and that leaves you more available to do the things that, you're more superior in.
Yeah.
Instead of trying to divide your attention in so many different ways that you do every single thing in a mediocre way.
Yeah. That's really helpful.
Mhm.
When do you think that you had this peak of clarity? What
Yeah,
point
that
did
was
this happen?
that was in
2020?
2017 when I was
17.
deployed. Hmm.
So that was
And
your moment of clarity. And then when you
yeah,
came home, so 18, 19, 20, and then 20, you had your baby, number 2. Would you
yeah,
say that was your highest stress time with residency?
I would say so. But again, it's always those cycles. and remembering that this period of time is really bad right now. But when I have those coping mechanisms that I've learned over time, the more I use them, the more easy it is for me to remember to actually use them. And then I remind myself that this too shall pass.
Mm-hmm.
Because you'll
Yeah.
always come out of it and you'll always go back into it, but you'll always come back out because
Yeah.
that's life, right? And so as I kind of go through the cycles of in and out, in and out, in and out, I always remember you'll come out. But, what I'm also learning is that my perspective can also be changed. So when I'm in it, it's just like, yeah, I might feel like it's a tornado, but hey, at least I'm cool. At least I'm not super hot,
Yeah.
So I'm also learning to change my perspective when I feel like I'm either overwhelmed and whatnot. I always say, you know, especially at work, there are times where things are completely a mess, but sometimes I have to slow down and say, you know what? How many years ago, the younger version of myself would have dreamed to be able to run a health clinic? I would have, I could not have imagined the responsibility that I have. And even though right now it's overwhelming, the younger version of myself is so proud of the things that I've done. So
I
don't let
heard
it break you.
something. Yeah, I heard something the other day, like, clips of podcasts and stuff. And someone was interviewing somebody else and said, imagine that you're born and somebody gives you this tiny human and says, your one job in life is to take care of this tiny human and make sure that this tiny human lives its entire life and it's happy and it's healthy and it's taken care of. And we're constantly looking for someone else to take care of, right? We have children, we have pets, we have friends, and we're always looking to fix somebody else. But the
Mhm.
reality is, we were all given that tiny human, and that tiny human is us.
Yes.
And you're the last person that you take care of. You worry about everybody else and try and fix everybody else's problems and take
Yes.
it upon yourself. But in the end, that tiny human that you were given from birth is the one that suffers the most until we
Mhm.
get into those moments where it's like so overwhelming that you just want to quit everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's nice that you've found that perspective shift and change. How how have you instilled some of these skills into your kids now?
Oh, I think this is the most scariest and challenging chapter of my life is having kids and whatever generational trauma that had was passed down to us. My goal is to not pass it down to my children, and it's even more important now for me to reflect this whole like holistic self-care approach, to be a good example for my children, um, because my goal is to just have them be happy and
Mm,
be mentally healthy. And when you look at society, that is unfortunately not the priority. And I need, I feel, you know, such a strong urge to try to teach them that I don't need them to be a dentist. I don't need them to follow in my footsteps. I just want them to go out there, do the things that make you happy so that you feel more fulfilled in your life, you know?
yeah.
Um, Try to minimize as much stress on them as possible. I think any parent can say, my goal is to just have my kids be happy.
Yeah. But it
And I
looks
need to do
different.
that by setting an example. I
Yeah.
thought that, but then I
Yeah.
realized that my kids are actually the one who's teaching me.
Hmm. Interesting.
It is
What kind of lessons do you think they're teaching you?
to stop being such an adult.
Play more, laugh
Play
more.
more.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So as adults, especially as dentists, we start moving from operatory chair to office chair, and then you go home and you try to de-stress from the day, and it's just like a normal routine that you do. With my kids, it's like, Let's play on the floor. Let's go
Mm,
play with some dirt. you know,
yeah.
let's laugh. Let's do silly things. Let's go jump in the rain. Things that can really just recharge you and just kind of make your soul happy. They
Yeah.
remind me to do those things and just stop stressing and enjoy now. It's always like, "Hey, mommy, look." It's always that. And I'm
Yeah.
like, that's so amazing, to be able to see them experience things for the first time and then to be a part of it. It's like I feel like I'm reliving my own childhood and almost healing that way.
Mm,
Yeah, I think it's amazing.
that's nice.
Kids will do that.
Yeah, that's true. I hope you enjoyed this part one with Dr. Charlie Cage. I learned a lot about her history, and I hope you did too. It's very nice to hear that she's openly sharing with everyone kind of the struggles that she's had in her career as a dentist and how she's brought that into her life. So stay tuned for part two. We decided to chop this into two sections because it was getting really long. In part two, we're going to talk about kind of her social media and how she curates content that brings her joy and makes her happy and isn't really focused on the metrics, the numbers, and has great partnerships with companies that see that. They see the value and the quality of content. So stay tuned for part two and catch you next time. Peace out, peeps. Bye.